So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
pleased to be here.
Thank you. So we talked. We have kind of cliff notes, just so you know. We've talked a little bit. So tell us where you grew up.
I grew up in a very small town, Gardner, Massachusetts. I went to Gardner High. Anyone who's from Massachusetts?
Gardner.
Gardner High. Yeah. We had a small community college in our area called Mount Wachusett Community College, and I really had a very modest upbringing with parents and a brother and a nice close-knit family in a community that had a lot of ethnic diversity and just a real kind of a homespun upbringing, really. You know,
Is it close to the ocean?
No, nowhere
No.
near.
Oh,
if you were to put a pin in the middle of Massachusetts, it would be right there, a little close to the New Hampshire border, so right around there.
Okay.
Supposedly the coldest part of Massachusetts.
I believe it.
Yeah, coldest.
I believe it.
That's why I'm here.
And then were you ever interested in anything that has to do with the ocean growing up, or nothing?
No, that came because of an opportunity I had to go on a ship when I was in high school.
Oh, cool.
I worked for part-time while I was going to high school for a combination insurance travel agency, and they had what was called a familiarization trip on a Holland America ship. So I was offered to go, and I went, and I just fell in love at that point, and I just said, this is something that I want to include in my life somehow going forward. And I didn't do it immediately, but we can talk kind of through the steps of how I got there.
Okay, well, tell us the
Yeah.
steps. Because you met your business partner in New York. So,
Yes.
So you must have gotten from Gardner to New York.
God, yes, I did. Well, so Holland America Cruises was in my head, and I said that's something that I really want to do. I ended up going to a community college. It wasn't Mount Wachusett, it was another one, to study the only program that I could find that had to do with the industry that I was interested in. It was called aviation and tourism. So I learned about writing airline tickets and doing aviation and learning how to plan these big sort of airline movements and all, and thought, what am I going to do with that? How am I going to get into a cruise line? So I opened up the Travel Weekly magazine because I subscribed thinking that's something I should do. And there was an ad for Holland America Cruises in New York City. So I asked my dad if he would drive me to New York, and he did. And I went in for the interview. I was there for about 4 hours. I interviewed with about 7 different people, and by the time I came down, I had gotten the job. I was 23, and I don't know if you remember, there was a movie with Meg Ryan called Working Girl. It was way back there. And one of the last scenes is she closes her door, and she's got this beautiful office, and she calls her mother, and she says, I can't believe I'm here. Well, they gave me a secretary and 4 staff and an office overlooking the Hudson River. And I closed the door and I called my mom. I said, "You're not gonna believe this! I'm in New York. I'm working for Holland America. Can you believe it?" And so that was like the beginning of that. And yes, it was 1978. It was a very, very European Dutch company. All the men were smoking cigars in the conference room. There were very, very few women, and the women that were there were mostly the secretaries. And there was one light that was always on in the evening, and my light was always on in the after hours. And I would walk down the hallway, and there was this woman there, and she had a great job. And she was a director of near-term planning. And I thought, well, I need to get to know this person. And it turns out that was my business partner. I turned it into a business partner. That was Josephine Kling. And we developed a friendship, and we just were kind of around each other, and, you know, I don't know, talking about, gee, can you imagine that we're here, and we're the only 2 women that have a staff, and we have management, and what are we doing here anyway? And so there were different kinds of programs that were going on in Holland America at the time. They wanted to develop an Air Sea program, and that's actually why I was hired. So I was hired to develop that. But these inquiries would come in every once in a while to charter a ship or to take over a whole portion of a ship for maybe it could have been an academic program, it could have been a conference, an incentive program, something like that. And nobody knew what to do with them. They just would go to someone, and maybe in planning, no one knew what to do. So she and I were talking about it one day, and we said, you know, if somebody started a business to target this part of the market. We don't see anybody out there doing this. We see travel agents, we see the retail market. No one's looking at ships other than for retail, and we wanted to start this. So we did, and it was. I can tell you a little bit about that too.
Well, yes, because now I'm going off script.
Yeah.
Because actually, you have a rare story that I think is related these days. I had a colleague when I was at Gettysburg College. Her name was Virginia Shine, and she wrote some of the seminal work on thinking manager, thinking male. And so, in a world that we have today, women have broken so many glass ceilings. They're still, high-level corporate to break. But you have an experience to share where women were kind of rare in positions of authority.
It's true, and actually, had we not started our own business, it would have been a long road to hoe, because it wasn't until 5 years ago that we had the first female president of a cruise line. So had we kept at the cruise industry at that time, now there's some great opportunities today. I mean, they broke that ceiling, they smashed that ceiling. And now a lot of the senior executives in the cruise industry are female, and that has been a huge leap forward in the last probably 5 to 8 years. But this was the only way we could really get to own our own thing and have our own company. But I think you and I were talking on the phone about how do we start it and how do we get it going. And here we were both in Manhattan. We had very little money, and we had no clients. And the ships really weren't set up for the kind of business we wanted to do. They had little portholes, and they weren't really large. And we just decided to just do it because it was passion. It was something that we both believed in, and we had an idea that it would work. So we pooled our money, and I would never suggest anybody do this, but we started a business on Madison Avenue with $26,000. And we just worked our tails off so that we could get to be able to pay for our overhead and pay for all that. I had a job in between Holland America and starting my business. If you look at the years, it was 2 years that I worked for the Delta Queen Steamboat Company, and I was determined to learn how to be in sales. I had never been in sales before, so they took a flyer on me and hired me. And I created a whole Delta Queen, I guess you would call it an old-fashioned period costume where I had a antebellum gown.
It sounds like showboat.
It was like, yeah. So I thought, how am I going to get people to learn about steamboats? So I got this antebellum gown, which I had made in Natchez, Mississippi, and I would travel up and down the East Coast, and I would put on presentations of the Old South, and I would talk about why women wore these and all that, why it was like that. And I ended up creating so much business that they gave me if you can believe this, in 1981, a $10,000 bonus. Wow. And I look at it today because I recently went online and figured out what it was worth today. That $10,000 is worth $26,000. So you can imagine, at my age, I was 26, and I got this bonus, and so that's what I used to start the business. Jo, on the other hand, had a boyfriend, and she went to Las Vegas, and she played Baccarat, and she won $10,000.
Which we do not advise.
Which we do not advise. This is not advisable. So we pooled our earnings, and that's how we started Landry Kling in 1982. And like I said, we've never looked back. We've had our moments, but we've never looked back.
The other thing that I guess I didn't realize, because Miami is so cruise-centered today, is that Holland America was in New York, and that I guess everything that has to do with cruises was up there, or it was starting to move around? We
started at the time that it was not the cruise industry. It was the steamship industry. This was back it was before it became the cruise industry. Carnival was barely starting up down here. Norwegian, I think, had one ship. It was really in its infancy. So all of the steamships were in New York. Home Lines, Cunard Line, Holland America Line, Costa, we were all in New York City, and that's where we wanted to be. But then it started up down in this area, and after we had been in business for 8 years, we decided to move the business down here to Miami, because we were on Eastern Airlines flying back and forth, like crazy, and it started to really become that we were almost living here, so we might as well move down.
So there was this airline called Eastern Airlines way back when.
Yeah.
And it was very big.
It was very big. And it made sense, and so we moved down here and reopened our business. We found jobs for all of our employees in New York, and started fresh.
What did you see about what did you see in the cruise industry did you just see that there was more activity in Miami, or was it by chance or orchestrated?
No, it was really clear. We looked at, first of all, we really did feel like we wanted to leave Manhattan at that time. It was not a good time. I mean, the end of the 80s in New York was a very trying time. It was not clean. It was not run well.
Right.
It was dangerous. And so we said, let's go somewhere. And we looked around the country, where could we go? And it was just completely, honestly, it had to be Miami, because this is where the cruise industry had developed. And so we came down here, and it's been great because we run into people all the time. I mean, the president of Royal Caribbean and Celebrity, they're our neighbors. We see them at Publix, so it's really nice to be here because we can get that nice relationship with all of our cruise industry partners. And we grew up with them.
Yeah, which is very cool. I guess most of us don't realize, when we talked on the phone, I was also surprised how you framed it, that the cruise industry kind of existed, sort of, but it really began in Miami as a real destination for cruises.
Because the word cruise started here, where people would actually go away on pleasure. Steamships out of New York were transportation. Even Holland America offered transatlantic cruises. It was transportation, as were all the cruise lines out of there, all the steamship lines out of there. And then when everyone started to build the business here in Miami, then it became known as the cruise industry. So our cruise industry is actually pretty young. It's not an old industry at all.
Yeah, I guess I certainly didn't realize it. I've seen it pretty much all my life, but I didn't realize that term didn't exist before the 1980s.
No, so we really rode, excuse the expression, a wave of this industry. We started out when it was just coming to be, and we just got on that wave and we just kept going. I mean, Joe and I were the only two female speakers at the industry conference at the time, which was called Sea-Trade. It's now the biggest industry conference that's here in Miami. At the time, it was at the Vista Hotel in New York in the World Trade Center. And that was the first time. The 2-year-old was, at that point, it was only 2 years old. And we got up on stage and we did a presentation that I think just started a huge revolution in the shipbuilding, to build ships for our marketplace, because we got up and pretty much said to everybody in the room, which were mostly men in suits, you are missing out on a huge business opportunity because you're going after retail. You're not even thinking about this convention industry and the meetings industry. And we talked about statistics and how big this industry was, and that people were going to big hotels and they were taking over whole hotels. Why couldn't they take over ships and do the same thing? So they started thinking about it, and all of a sudden the ships started to develop in more meeting rooms and more conference rooms. And actually that's how Joe and I got inducted into the Cruise Industry Hall of Fame, amongst very good company, because of our early influence on the industry to build ships for this marketplace.
So you were there as the cruise industry started. You saw, I guess, ships being built specifically for leisure, not just travel from one location to another. Right?
Exactly.
That's really cool.
Exactly.
Let's jump to now for a second as well, because we'll go back there for a second. But what does a day in your life look like at King and Landry?
Well, we have a huddle every morning, and we huddle at 9:13. Why 9:13? Because we read a book a long time ago that said if it's an odd time, people show up. So we have a meeting at 9:13. It's a stand-up meeting. It's in our situation room. We're surrounded by our sales statistics. We have a big screen where people who are not in our location but have to call in from out of town and are off-site, they call in. And we go through our day. We go through our day and we talk about, what am I doing? What are you doing? Do you need me? Do you need to talk to me? Afterwards, I meet with my wonderful assistant, Milena, who is here. And she would talk through my calendar, my schedule. I know what I'm doing. And she helps me think about all the different people in the office that need to speak with me that day. And then we're off and running. And
didn't you say that one person talks about your mission? Or how?
Yes. In the huddle.
Really cool.
In the huddle, we're very focused on our corporate core culture statements. So we have share, and some one person in the office volunteers to share about our corporate culture. Actually on Fridays, we really delve into one. We take one of our corporate culture statements and we delve into it. Last Friday it was continuous process improvement. We went around the room and talked about what have you done this week that really helped with continuous process improvement. And some of ours, there's always an elegant solution. We go the extra mile. Our passion for cruising shows up in everything we do. So we hire into that. So when we're hiring, we show people our corporate culture, we show people our expectations, which Joe and I wrote expectations when we first opened our doors in 1982, and with very little changes, it's almost the same document today as we had before. Wow. How do you treat each other? How do you treat clients? How do you treat our vendors? How do we treat each other? So when you hire into that, it really makes a big difference, and so everybody is the same way. And that means when we're looking at someone to interview, I'm always thinking about our whole team and our whole staff, and I think, well, how would they relate to the team? When they walk in, are they going to be team players? Are they going to work as hard as everybody else? Are they going to give of themselves like everybody gives of themselves? I mean, we have an incredible team, and it's a very passionate team, and I think they would tell you the same thing.
Which is so awesome because so many organizations find it incredibly challenging to bring in their mission, their culture, and integrate it into their everyday activities. And you've been able to succeed at that in kind of an intimate way, so that everyone is reflecting on the same thing at the same time that has to do with how the business runs.
I think it started with our values. We talked about partnership, and when Joe and I first met, it's not like we interviewed each other to be business partners, but we knew we shared values with each other. And we started talking about our backgrounds, and something came up. We both realized we both went to Catholic school, and so that's all we had to say to each other. Okay, I get your values, you get my values. We get it. So we started to build our business based on those values. And when we are dealing with a particular issue or problem, we go back to that. If we do it this way, would we want someone to do it to us that way? No. So that's how we determine what we're going to do and not do, is based on how do we want to treat others, how do we want to be treated, and that usually handles the question immediately.
And that actually raises a question that we talked about. One of the core elements of our School of Business is entrepreneurship, and you started the business with a partner. So what advice would you offer someone who's thinking about starting a business and working with another individual?
Our partnership really is extraordinary, has been extraordinary. She's no longer in the business because Joe retired earlier this year. She was older than me, so we knew at some point this was going to happen, but it was only after 36 years. So we had a long 36-year run with each other. But I would say to make sure absolutely that your values are aligned, because if that is the case, then almost everything else becomes smooth. Then find someone that does things differently than you. You have to have some sort of an imbalance in a way. I was always the big picture thinker. I always went out, and sometimes I never looked back or would really look at the details, where Joe is really detailed. So we balanced each other so well. I mean, I knew I could never go too far over the edge without her pulling me back. And she knew that if she got too into the details, I'd yank her up. So that's how we worked with each other, and it worked really well. And as a matter of fact, I've had this insight really since I started to think about coming here, how much I've grown in the little under a year that she's left, because I've had to now be both. I've had to learn to be a little bit more disciplined. Right? My desk is clean now, right? I've learned how to keep my desk clean, because I just things start piling up and things start happening, and I always depended on Joe to be able to kind of take care of some of those, like the smaller detail parts that I might have missed, and so now I'm becoming more of that too.
That's kind of cool. And when you mentioned that you had the same Catholic upbringing, it sounds like you immediately had a sense of shared values and shared understanding, and that was important, even shared ethics, so that you would not necessarily view the world identically, but can balance one another on those kinds of questions on values and ethics.
Absolutely, and we knew what right and wrong. We knew about telling the truth. We knew the the detriment of not doing that. So again, it wasn't even something we had to talk about.
Right.
We just knew that about each other. But I would say if anyone's meeting a business partner for the first time, you should check in with your values and each write maybe a document of what's important to you. That's how when we hire, we have people read our corporate culture statement. They read it, and we say, "Can you get behind this? Does this speak to you?" And if someone jumps out and says, "Oh my God, this is me," okay, perfect. That's what I want someone to actually get enthusiastic about it.
In the same way that we discuss embracing Dominican values in our education. So that's very consistent in terms of the success of the organization.
Yeah. Now, if someone's eyes light up, when you talk about your values and they really get it, then
That's
they'll
cool.
fit with the team.
So what's the most rewarding part of your job now that you're doing both things?
It's a hard question because it is rewarding sort of internally and externally. So rewarding as far as what we do for our customers, what I see is when I look in the eyes of our customer and I see that we really made a difference and we created an experience that they couldn't have had elsewhere. I was in Alaska earlier this year and I was standing by the railing with a group of people who were, and they came to us extremely well traveled, but they had never...
The railing of a ship.
Yeah, the railing of a ship. And we had chartered the ship for them, and it was a financial services company. And they told us, the meeting planner, that they wanted something extraordinary. They had very well-traveled people. They were concerned that Alaska was going to be kind of a big enough destination for them. But what we said is, it's a bucket list destination. It doesn't matter. I mean, most people have never been to Alaska, and even if they have wanted to, they might not think about it. I saw these adults turn into children just with the wildlife and the glaciers and looking out at this beautiful, pristine water. And I saw the camaraderie, and they started speaking to each other. And this is the beauty of doing something in an experiential environment, is that it changes people. So it's not just a meeting, it's not just a convention, it's not just an opportunity to go away. People actually leave changed, and that's something that we really strive for.
That's really cool. And you enjoy seeing that experience and the way that people change. That's
All
great.
of us do. I mean, if you were to talk to anybody in our company, that's the thing that really gets our juices going, if you want to call it that. And we love going on ships with people who have never been on one before, just so we can see their faces when they pull away from shore for the first time and do it.
That's cool. And you organize the entire experience on board the ship, including lease the ship?
Often. Most people think, oh, a cruise ship includes everything. It has the food and all of that. Well, that's okay if you just want something that is what everybody else can buy. But if you want something that's extraordinary, then we will do customized events ashore, and it might include bringing someone to a special palace, a special monastery that maybe is close to the public, nobody knows about, and we bring them in and do something really, really, really special. We bring on special speakers. We like to elevate it to the extraordinary.
So how does your team kind of get a sense of what people are looking for?
We do a lot of vetting. I mean, as far as when we have a client, what they want to do, we ask a lot of questions. We get to know them really, really well, and we want to know what's on your mind, like what is your dream? What are you trying to accomplish here? And we try to work around, what their goals and objectives are. And it's not just those corporate programs that we do, but our company has really morphed over the years. We're doing dockside charters for the Olympics, for special government projects. We've got several projects going on right now in Saudi Arabia, and there's a really a strong move for Saudi Arabia to open up tourism, but they don't have the infrastructure. So they're looking at placing ships as floating hotels to help bring people to see some of their largest archaeological digs there. So we're working on projects with that. So we get involved in all kinds of things. And so each one is individual and unique, and we have to ask, I'm also working on an electronic music festival in China. There you go. So that's a client that we've had now for about 6 years. They're out of Malaysia, and we've done this with them out of Singapore and now China and soon to be Japan.
So maybe most of us don't know, but it could just be me that I don't realize. So you handle all of the logistics as well as contracting everything that needs to happen Does that include the food? The whole, every last
It
detail?
can be. It can be, because for the Saudi Arabia project, it'll be halal food, and so we tailor it, and we sit down with the chefs and the hotel directors, and we help to figure out what they're doing. We also have anybody know what WOD is? WOD, meaning workout of the day. It's a CrossFit, right? So we're doing WOD on the waves in January. We have a full ship charter of 3,000 people doing CrossFit. And they all have special needs for food, special needs for their equipment, special needs for all kinds of things on board. So it can be anything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And it happens
you wanna
all around
come?
the world. I guess I do. So where do I sign up, and can I have a couple of weeks off? And how do one of our other cornerstones is ethics, and you mentioned like things like never lie, those kinds of things. But the cruise ship industry, I don't have a sense of its kind of ethical core, and maybe you can share a little bit about that, as well as your particular. Clearly, your organization is very focused on ethics.
Well, it's very important to us that the industry has stepped up. Very important, because when we first started, I can't tell you the environmental violations that we were privy to, that we just didn't, it was heartbreaking. We loved the industry, we didn't like that. What are we going to do? It was against kind of our own value system of what we wanted. And then we started to see changes made, and we started to be a part of these meetings where changes were made. And so now the cruise ships are state of the art, way beyond most hotels in what they can do and what much they protect the environment. They take everything off, they compact everything, they have purification systems on board. When they have gone way overboard to bring up their environmental standards. So now we at least can feel good about that. But I have to say, in the beginning, that part was difficult.
But you managed through it.
We managed through it.
And you understood that was a challenge that the industry was going to have to overcome. And that's just the way it is.
And then we helped to be a part of that change.
Yeah,
and so talking to the different cruise ship owners and going to meetings and going to the different seminars and trade shows and speaking our voice and talking about it. And it wasn't us by any stretch, but we helped to add to the voice of people that were trying to make a difference there.
I'd like to change gears if we can, because you also have the experience of Miami having changed. And many of us may not have that sense of what Miami was in the 80s and what it is today.
It was a small town.
Right.
Yeah.
And choosing to be in Miami was industry focused, but it must have come with other challenges. Sure, it had Brickell and there was activity that way. But you've seen Miami grow to now, what is it? What are we now? An alpha world city, alpha minus world city? And so back then it probably would have been a D minus town. And moving forward.
I can only tell you, after 10 years of living in New York City, it was a breath of fresh air. We were like two little kids in a candy store, because we came down here. Neither one of us were involved. We didn't have husbands. That we just both moved to Miami. We were able to just walk onto a tennis court and play tennis, and not have to make an appointment. We were able to go to the beach without having to go all the way out to Jones Beach or get in a car and go through bridges and tunnels and all of that. We felt like we had died and gone to heaven coming to Miami, and it was a small town in the 80s. So there was still diversity. We still had it's not what it is today, of course, with all the restaurants and the infrastructure, but it had a charm. It really had a charm at that time.
It was beaches and Jonestown crowd. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
No, actually, you're right. It was Lincoln Road wasn't there, and Ocean Drive was just a series of...
A place where you wouldn't want to go.
No. News Cafe was there.
News Cafe, right.
That was News Cafe
that was there, okay.
And then it was a lot of people sitting in rocking chairs, on their front porch, and mostly it was for older people to live on Ocean Drive. And so unfortunately, they all moved out, and all this happened. But it had its ups and downs. Yes, there was also it was kind of the heyday in lieu of the drug culture during what we got here. And we
I
were
did
told,
think that, as you said, that New York City, as you're looking around in New York City and it was dangerous in New York City, and you said, so let's go down to Miami. I'm like, oh, well.
it's all relative.
It's all relative.
It's all relative. It really is. No, but I remember, because I live in the Grove, that the police would say to us, if you ever come in the dark and it's after dark and you're at the corner of Grand and Douglas, as a woman, do not stop. I don't care if it's a red light, just don't. So we just went through red lights.
Right.
And we did everything to, we never had an incident, but we know it was all around us. It was a lot going on down here. But we kept to our focus. Our focus was to start a business. And, how cool was it that we could have an office, we're still in the same office this many years later, that has French doors on the water with palm trees and manatees in the canal and beautiful hawks and cranes and all of this. I mean, every day that we go to the office, we really appreciate where we are. And that was something else. I mean, the real estate broker said, don't you want a high-rise on Brickell? And we said, no, we really want all these things. And so they showed us this place, which is, down on Gables Waterway. We love it. We're still there. So we, have a nice environment as well.
Right, it's lovely down there. How do you perceive Miami now as a place for startups? Because there's a lot of Miami is kind of one of the hot spots in the nation for startup businesses, new ventures. How do you see it?
Well, I think Miami is very business oriented. I think anyone doing a startup, this is a great place to do it. I was just at a chamber meeting recently, and I was pleased to see all the young faces there. So I think that really understanding the value of these relationships. And there's a Beacon Council, a couple of different organizations that you can join of all different ethnic backgrounds as well. And you can make connections. And I see a lot more people taking advantage of that. Even the Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau, there's a lot of different places, and you can volunteer and you can be a part of it. And we didn't have a lot of that. I mean, it was very small, it was very basic, and now there's a lot of help. And I think that Miami is very, very business oriented. So it's a good place to start.
And how much Spanish goes on in your industry?
Well, our office is, I would say, predominantly bilingual. A lot, not just in Spanish, in Thai, in Philippine. We have a variety of.
That's really my question: is how multicultural is it? And Miami has become increasingly multicultural. So not only, in terms of North American cities, it's really Montreal and Miami as the ones that are kind of fully bilingual.
It's wonderful. And actually, about 3 years ago, we decided to add the word global into our name. So now, instead of Landry and Kling Cruise Events, we became Landry and Kling Global Cruise Events. And it just was the magic elixir. That global business is now coming our way. Now, we marketed to it, social media, marketing, Google ads, all of that to global. And when I mentioned that we have business in Singapore and in Saudi Arabia and all these places, that has come since we put global in our names. And now that we're there, we're not looking back, and we're continuing to expand in global areas.
Cool. So what's the most rewarding part of your job? What would that be? What's that look like?
Oh, wow. The most rewarding, I think, would be, or is, the fact that I really love going to work every day. And after 37 years, I think that's saying something. I really enjoy the people that I'm working with. I enjoy seeing them blossom. And we've actually been a incubator for a lot of people in the industry. When we celebrated our 35th anniversary, it was on Celebrity Cruise Line. I won't forget it. We stood out on a stage, and I said, how many people in the room formerly worked for Landry and Kling? And all of these hands went up, and I looked around and saw leaders in the industry all around me. And that was so gratifying. I mean, neither Joe or I ever had children, so for us, this is what we birthed. So we birthed this business, and we have this relationship with all of our team. And it's just so great to see them move on. So I guess if you say what's the most rewarding, it's that. It's sort of birthing this and developing it and seeing it constantly grow and change.
That's cool. Yeah. All right, you know what the next question is?
What?
What's the least rewarding?
Keeping my desk clean. No, it's
that's a sign of a genius is a dirty desk.
Is it really?
Yes.
Yeah. There's the day-to-day, the daily disciplines, but it's still, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's just what you have to do to do your business. You have to think about strategic planning. What day are we doing that? When are we having our meetings? How are we setting this up? It's not that you just go in and you have an unstructured day. There is the daily discipline of making it happen, and we see the difference when we stay to our daily discipline. We see it happen, we see the numbers, and then we can all, be happy and rewarded. As a matter of fact, we have a little game going on right now, and the game is that if we make our numbers this year, that the whole office is going to Cuba together. That's the game. So we're in the incentive business.
So now who doesn't want to work for you?
We're in the incentive business, and so we like to do that. And, and we have pop-ups also. If anybody during the day feels like they've had a bad day, not a bad day, but a day that's had a little more stress, they can declare a pop-up, and we can have a little refreshments and cheese or wine or whatever, and have a little, before we leave for the day, just in case it's, something that is needed.
Yeah. So one other question along that line: what advice could you give Joyce of 36 years ago about dealing with clients that maybe our students would be interested in?
I'd say the wisdom that's come over the years is that that sometimes people aren't as integrity conscious as you are, and to not be naive about that. So it's one thing to have your own levels of integrity, but you have to be eyes wide open to other people's lack of, and look for those signs and really pay attention to that, because we've had a lot of learning experiences. We hope we don't have to do them twice, but sometimes we do. And we always sit back afterwards and say, oh, okay, what did we learn from that? What's the takeaway? And I hope that everybody in our office, I believe they do, has a feeling that acknowledging a mistake is not a bad thing. We actually relish that. It's like you're not going to get, tapped as someone who's bad or wrong if you acknowledge a mistake. Let's take it apart. Let's look at it, because let's make sure that doesn't happen again. Yeah. So I would just say that you take the blinders off and not be, naive about how business is conducted out in the world, and make sure that you're aware of that, especially globally. We've learned a lot about being in a global world, and the negotiations and how it's done, and how some people, keep things to themselves and close to the vest, and they're not really honest about it. And we come from this, everything is transparent world. And doesn't happen that way in the rest of the world. So you just have to pay attention and culturally understand what's going on.
But on a positive side, what's the most, you can share with us, like, things that are the most rewarding things that you learn from your clients?
Ooh, rewarding things from clients. I would say that clients like to be happy, personally, personal happiness. So if you can plug into what's their personal happiness button and make that happen for them, then that makes all the difference in the world. So we pay attention to little things, the age of their children, or what's going on in their life personally, so that we can maybe put something in their room that would make them smile, or do something. And then that helps to keep them as a relationship that they'll remember you. They'll come back and they'll remember you, and they'll want to do business with you again.
I apologize. I have dropped my microphone, but now it's here again.
Oh, good.
and that suggests that you develop a more intimate relationship with your client to learn what they're looking for and what they're interested in.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually one of our culture statements also. Mm-hmm. We developed long relationships with our clients.
And that creates a strength for you. Right?
That creates strength, yeah. And not just with our clients, we add everybody into that. Cruise line partners, vendors, other people on our team. It's like that relationship that we create is universal. It can't just be with one person. It has to be with everybody.
So when you hire someone, you mentioned that you want them to read the corporate culture statement. Mm-hmm. Right? What else do you look for kind of at an entry level if someone's interested in working for you? Do you look for that enthusiasm over... Do you think that the enthusiasm is more important than skills, or a combination of the two? How do you make that decision?
There's a lot of things. I think curiosity is something that is very important to me. I'm a very curious person, and I want to know that someone else is curious. That kind of helps to understand the intellect a little bit. If someone doesn't leave a stone unturned, they like to find out more. Positive. It has to be that we can't enter someone into our, if we put someone that was not positive into our pool of people right now, it would be like a dead weight in the middle of the room. So we have to get that positive energy. Someone that's willing to, another one of our corporate culture statements, go the extra mile and take care of their teammates, and to take care of themselves. So if there's something to be done, stuck in and do it. And we've all done it. I mean, I've been on a ship sitting on the floor stuffing packages that are going in each other's rooms. I mean, there's nothing that's too small for us to be working on. Everybody knows that. I'll do it too.
Right.
You know, so especially, I'll be probably the first one that will get there and do it. So it's, I think it's a can-do attitude, another statement of ours, positive can-do attitude. And if they demonstrate that in an interview, then they kind of go to the head of the class. And the rest of it, the skills, it depends on the job. Yeah. We have some very skilled jobs where we have to have cruise line experience because our clients expect us to be the experts. And we have others that are entry level that you can get to learn along the way because it might be supporting the sales team or supporting operations. But we have a whole array of different jobs. Some are very technical, but you're right. We have to get some that are experienced.
That sounds like a very nurturing environment, very nurturing and supportive environment that you've created. And,
I hope so.
And well, look, they're right there going, yes. I'm particularly grateful that you mentioned curiosity because that's something that seems to have gone away these days, where there's sort of a loss of curiosity that motivates individuals to actually go the extra mile to learn the client and get things done in that way.
Well, just this week, I think we found two potential, not errors, but let's just say oversights that would have happened had we not dove in because it didn't make sense. And if something doesn't make sense, check it out. Yeah. Because there's a reason it doesn't make sense, right? There's something that's not quite right. And we did, and then we realized we pulled it back and we were able to catch it before the proposal went out. Right. So I think that's an important skill.
Right, cool. Well, if you look around, we have some students in the audience, right? And so, because you're an executive and you make these decisions for individuals to be hired, what advice would you give the students as they search candidacy positions, as they enter positions where they're going to be hired? What's that thing that might be Miami-centric or industry-centric that says I want to be hired?
Oh, if I were interviewing someone, what I would be looking for?
Interviewing someone, yeah.
I love it when someone says that they can be counted on. If someone says to me, you can count on me. You can count on me. I'm going to help your company grow. I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to get the job done. Especially if someone is coming in on a managerial level, need to know that they're team players, that they're not just going to manage someone, that they're going to manage among them, that they're going to be part and parcel and show themselves as an example, not standing apart, as that would actually be there for them. But as an owner of a company, there's nothing better that you can tell me that walk in with confidence and say, you can count on me. That makes all the difference in the world to me.
Yeah, we talk a lot about that in the leadership class, that when kind of these special relationships, like mentoring relationships, form, it's about me saying that I count on me, and then I follow up with performance, showing you that you can count on me. And so over the long term, we develop that trust in getting the work done.
Because otherwise, if you don't do that, you could be the kind of person that, well, you can count on me when the circumstances are fine, when I'm happy, when I feel good.
Right.
But when you walk into an office environment, you need to shed all of that. That stays behind. If you're going to work in an office environment, it's you show up, and you show up dynamic, and you show up who you are. You need help, yes, find the help. But don't bring everybody else down, because you've got a particular circumstance or whatever. We understand that. We're very caring about that. Take the time. Go away. Go take care of it someplace else. But try not to affect the rest of your teammates. Let's keep our environment as an environment of trust
Yeah.
And support and productivity.
Right. So we're almost at the end of our interview, and when that happens, we go into this bouillon de couture, where it's like the inside the actor studio, where we come up with some questions, 10 questions that give us insights into you.
Is there only one answer?
There is only one answer, and there's a senior educator here doing the grading. So we'll see how we do. Do you have a favorite publication?
Is it for news or is it for that's what I'm saying?
Whatever it is. Whatever it is.
Okay, well, just for just pure pleasure, National Geographic.
Oh, cool. If you could pack your bags today and leave tomorrow with Melena's permission, where would you go?
I would go to Kashmir.
Oh.
I've been reading about it a lot lately, and that's on my bucket list. Yeah.
Cool. Any book you read for leisure?
The probably most recent one I read was the recent Daniel Silver. I love international intrigue.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Do you have a favorite sound?
You mean sound, like
sound? Sure.
Not music.
Or music. Everything's right.
Okay. Sound for me would be, I'm going to go with the Tibetan bells.
Oh, cool. Do you have a least favorite sound?
Yes, a leaf blower.
A leaf. Well,
ruin my day.
Don't hang around here at 11:40 on Tuesdays. I'll tell you that. Anything that annoys you?
Yes, the current political discourse.
Yeah. And what profession other than the one you have would you attempt? Anything that interests you?
Right now, yes, I would love to be a seed capital investor for people starting businesses and new ideas.
Oh, cool.
I'd love to do that.
Any profession that you particularly don't think is you?
Yeah, politician.
Politician. Do you have a guilty pleasure that you can share with us?
This is going to sound really bizarre. Going on a cruise, not working with my family and friends. We do it once a year at Christmas, and it is a total guilty pleasure. It's wonderful.
Well, now I know the answer to the next one, because you already shared it with me. What's your favorite way to de-stress?
Up here, that's what I'm saying to it, meditation is for my brain and for my health, and my body, rowing.
Rowing. And you just went on a rowing?
We just had the World Championship, Masters Championship in Sarasota, which I competed in last weekend. I was in 5 races, and it was very humbling. These are the world's best, and a lot of them were former national athletes and former Olympians, but we got down the course.
I mean, it may be humbling, but you were there.
We were there. I think our closest as a team was second place, and that's the kind of race that the only first place matters. They only give out gold medals. They give out nothing else but gold. So, you know what? We had a blast. It was fun.
Right. I'd be drowning, if I had attempted that. So congratulations.
Thank you.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Now, for the next few minutes, do we have any questions from the audience? Did I lose my thing?
Yeah, talk to the mic. Is it on? Turn it on. Go. How you doing?
Good.
All right. First question actually would be, I think he kind of laid into it as far as one of your least rewarding things that you desire or what have you. It would kind of, for my question would be, how do you balance work and home? Being a CEO, how do you balance your work life and your home life?
Well, first of all, I have an A1 first-class husband, sitting in the second row. It's really almost not so much balancing work and home, it's balancing work and everything else in my life. I'm an activist. I'm always at meetings for the commission, trying to preserve Coconut Grove. I have historically designated homes in the past. And I find myself involved with everything from animal rights to helping mentor young women. And so there's so many things that I love to do in my life that it's just, I get to do them, and I get to do a lot of them, and a lot of them is because of having the great support that I have too. I've got 2 dogs and a cat, and we work out who's going to take care of those. Mostly it ends up being Gene, because he has his office in the house, and he's starting a business now too, so we're both entrepreneurs. But if you want something done, give it to a busy person. You've probably heard that. So the people that I know that are super, super busy and are doing a lot in their lives, figure out a way to fit it in. I don't think there's any magic answer. It's how badly do you want to do it? How badly do you want to do it? And then you just make it work. Yeah.
All right, the last question I would have is, you said that you've been in business for 37 years. The one thing that you would change or do differently, what's that one thing that you would do differently?
Oh, that's easy. I would never have got involved in technology. It was about 10 years ago that we thought, oh, hey, let's start not just a website, but let's start a web platform. And neither my partner or I knew anything about technology. So we hired all these people who supposedly knew more than we did. We spent a ton of money on this technology and worked so hard. And I just felt that in a way it kind of tore us apart, because it wasn't what we should have been doing at that moment in time. It was a great idea. It was a really great idea. But if you're in technology, you need to understand the technology side of it. And we didn't have anybody on our team that was really fully, able to really get that off the ground. So that was the one thing I would do differently, is I probably would never have gone down that path, and I would have done something else with that idea. So instead of creating a technology around it, I would have done something. What we've done is we created the definitive meeting planning guide to cruises. And we thought that once we turned everything on, we would just get all these people coming to it. And we weren't really thinking that the market for that was actually smaller, of course, much smaller than the retail market. And so it was never really able to get the legs that it had. So my business partner worked extremely hard on it, and I think that she really gave a lot of her heart and soul to it, and probably we wouldn't have done that.
How important is community service for business people? For someone in business, especially an executive, because that's partly the question that's there.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you do things with animal rights, mentor women, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important. I think it's how you get known in the community as well. I belong to a number of organizations, and one of them is the International Women's Forum, which is the conference is here in Miami in 2 weeks. We have 1,000 women coming from all over the world to Miami, and I'm on several committees for that to get that off the ground. The people I've met through that, I mean, these are astronauts and physicists and people I would, and no way in the world would I have met these people any other way but that. So if you're doing that kind of service, you meet people and you get a chance to help. I personally like to mentor, and I was working for a while with an incubator, a technology incubator in downtown Miami, and helping these 2 young guys from Romania figure out how they were going to get into the cruise industry. So, I was a Girl Scout leader because, again, I had something to give to little girls and didn't have girls of my own, so it made sense to do that. I don't know. I think personally it's rewarding to me to do it. It may not be rewarding to everybody, but it's very personally rewarding.
But it's important to get out of the office.
Yes.
And,
Yes, very important.
Hi, my name is Catherine Riscala, and I wanted to know how your company managed to compete with chains such as Royal Caribbean and Carnival, or what is your differentiation factor that you have? Yeah.
That's a very good question, because for the first, I would say, 10, 15 years of our business, we had a lock on this. There wasn't anybody else doing what we were doing, and the cruise lines did not have departments to handle this. They just let us do it. And all of a sudden, they realized there was a lot of money to be made in this, and so they started building departments to do it. So in essence, one of our biggest competitors right now are the cruise lines, and especially because they have a lot of money to put into social media. So there was a time when if you put in corporate cruises or events at sea, boom, Landry and Kling was the first one on Google, first one, second one, third one, and now the analytics have all changed, and now the cruise lines have a lot of money to throw at it, so they can pay to come up where we used to be organically in that area. So we've just had to kind of outsmart it, and so we have strategy meetings, and we figure, well, how are we going to outsmart everybody this time? And that's when we came up with the global. And the global now means that we're not competing with them anymore. Now we're more partnering. So when we call them and we say, like we just did, we need your ship for 2 months, and we need you to put it in Abu Dhabi, it's like, okay. Now they're really on top of that, and they don't have a department necessarily working on things like that. So we kind of figured out, what else can we do? How can we continue to keep growing and stretching ourselves? Because if we stayed in just corporate meetings and incentives, we would have been run over, seriously run over. So we had to just shift our perspective, and that came during the downturn also. And during the downturn is when we started doing special interests, and we were doing. We had an American Girl Dolls cruise. We had 500, little girls and 1,000 adults all on a cruise ship. Can you imagine what that was like? And the music cruises. We've done rock cruises and the EDM cruises, and it's amazing how you just can shift. If you just make up your mind.
But you stuck with your core competency.
We stuck with the core competency. We never went away from the cruise industry. And we've had people that have said to us, oh, why don't you do hotels? Why don't you? It's because it would take away our differentiation. That's our differentiation. So right on our materials and in our documents, we say, this is all we do. You can count on us to know what it is that you need to know about this. And it is a very, very specialized knowledge. I mean, when you think about chartering a ship as a dockside project and moving thousands of people on and off a ship that's just dockside, and how do you take care of the waste removal, and how do you do the ticketing, and how does this whole thing work? I mean, we know how to do this, and a lot of people just don't know how to do it.
Well, that's right, because just as you said that, when you go and you do that, as you said that, I was thinking, well, if I were doing it, it would be this massive failure. So we're grateful that there's someone like you that can handle this. Well, Joyce, thank you so much. As the dean has some closing comments. Oh, we have. I'm sorry.
Me?
I didn't realize.
Hi. Thank you very much for coming to Barry, and Manny for making this interview riveting. One quick comment and then a question. So about 15 years ago, the American Bar Association sponsored with your company
you're right.
continuing legal education.
That's right.
And I remember it being your company because it was the coolest thing that I could get continuing education credits and be on a cruise. And, a lot of people went. Probably 400 or 500 people went. And not only did I get credits, but it was a great time. So thank you very much for that. The question. For me, there's a little bit of a disconnect from your education to the incredible growth of your company. So who mentored you in the early years of developing your company? Because the buzzwords that you're using and the environment that you've created, I don't think you get from academia. Unless it just is in your DNA. So that's my question.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I have had wonderful people in my life that I've been able to call upon to ask questions, people that I've met through the IWF organization and others that I've met. But I love to read. I'm a voracious reader, and I love business books. And I could probably talk about many, many, many of them. And the one that I go back to repeatedly is Howard Schultz's book, How He Started Starbucks. And it's called Building a Business One Cup at a Time. And he really went through it to get that to market, to really get that done. And I get inspired by reading things like that. I get inspired by meeting people, and even on airplanes. I was recently on a flight, and I was sitting next to this gentleman, and he picked up on my enthusiasm because I was going someplace really cool. And we started talking, and he finally leaned over and he said, I've been wanting to charter a ship here, call me. And it was the chairman and the founder of Overstock.com was sitting right next to me. talk to everybody on an airplane. Talk to everybody.
I just
Don't
did.
go on and put your earphones on, right? Have your business cards in your pocket always.
I met all sorts of fun people. I just flew back from
Yeah.
Italy, and we were having a party in the back.
So, so I have had, thank you for saying that. I mean, I have had some just incredible people that have come through my life that have really helped. I've attended a lot of wonderful sessions and seminars and speakers, and I read and read and read and read and read, and that's my curiosity. So I always want to know more, and I always want to read more. Yeah, thanks.
And I want to thank you for being one of the incredible people that walked through our lives. Because the stories have been awesome.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you.
Very welcome.
Where to go?
Ms. Landry, thank you very much. We have a couple of gifts for you. We understand that in addition to rowing, you like orchids.
I love it.
And so we have an orchid for you. And in there is a very rowing shirt for you.
Oh.
So,
And may I acknowledge my team that's
Yes.
here, because
Yes,
not
please.
everybody could make it, because some had to stay behind and make the money tonight.
You have your-
But if I could just acknowledge my team, and there's Robert and Milena and Xavier, who's our newest on our team, who just joined us a little while ago. And that's Andrew, that's Milena's husband, and my husband Gene, who's here. And of course, Pim Lada, who's back there with the camera, and she's our graphics and marketing person. So thank you. Thank you for that.
So thank you.
I would like to do the same. I'd like to acknowledge Professor Manny Tejeda for the great work he did. Hayan and Vanessa, who are our wonderful logisticians, this wonderful experience, as well as the audio-visual team and the people who set up and worked so hard to make this a wonderful experience for everyone. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you. Please complete the